Muy buenas tardes con todos. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí el día de hoy con nosotros. Estamos con EducationUSA y con New York University Tandon School of Engineering para hablar un poquito de cómo escoger el posgrado ideal para ustedes. Vamos a hablar un poco de programas de ingeniería y por supuesto también mencionaremos los pasos de admisiones con NYU. Les quiero recordar que con esta institución tenemos un beneficio muy bueno para los beneficiarios de Colfuturo. Este consiste en una beca de $14,000 al año para los beneficiarios de Colfuturo y también un graduate assistantship totalmente asegurado. Eso es una muy buena oportunidad. No todos los estudiantes tienen la oportunidad de ser seleccionados para ser graduate assistants. Entonces, el hecho de que con el convenio de Colfuturo es asegurado es una muy buena oportunidad. Les recuerdo que para postularse a la convocatoria, esta abre el 10 de enero, cierra el 28 de febrero y abren los resultados el 11 de mayo. Para postularse solo tienen que tener pues sus notas de pregrado, un promedio competitivo, dominar una segunda lengua y también habrá una porción de ensayo. Entonces espero que se animen a postularse. Si quieren más información sobre esta convocatoria del programa Crédito Beca, pueden entrar a colfuturo.org, hacer clic en programas, luego programa Crédito Beca y estará toda la información. El día de hoy estamos con Carrie Bowling. Ella es la directora asistente de la Oficina de Admisiones de Posgrado y también estamos con un alumno de esta institución de New York University con Tandon, él se llama Andrés. Entonces, si tienen preguntas sobre la experiencia de un estudiante internacional por allá, con mucho gusto podemos contestar. Vamos a empezar la presentación. Cualquier pregunta que tengan, por favor, las van poniendo en el chat y al final vamos a tener una sección para contestar todas sus dudas. Carrie, thank you so much for being here today. We are so excited to hear all about choosing the right graduate program and then, of course, diving into engineering. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much for the kind introductions. Yeah, so I'm going to be here to discuss quite a few things with you about sort of the beginning stages of finding a graduate program in the US that's an engineering program that's right for you. So let's jump into how to get that started for you. Oops. Sorry, my slides are not going. 1 second.
No worries.
There. Oh, now they glitched, I think. There. They jumped ship. All right, we'll try again. Okay, so first and foremost, I think the most important thing for you as a student when beginning this process is to narrow down your search. So you're going to come across thousands of institutions in the United States that offer engineering programs, and it can seem really overwhelming at the beginning. So some of the ways I know a lot of students begin to narrow down that search is looking at institutional rankings for their university, which is of course a good way to begin the search, but it definitely should not start or stop there. It can start there, just don't end there. I think that can be a mistake that students make, is picking maybe the top 3 schools that are ranked at the top 3 in the US and then not looking beyond that. It's really important at the graduate level, since your program is going to be so highly focused, that you make sure that the program that you're applying to actually fits your goals and your needs. So there are a few things that I always tell students that you may want to consider that you haven't actually thought about before, outside of things like rankings and just the program in general. A few of those things I've listed here. I'm just going to run down a few of those with you. So first and foremost is the location of the university that you're applying to. There's a few factors that you can think about with that, including the size of the institution as well as the size of the location, meaning is it in a big city? Is it in more of a rural or suburban environment? Additionally, thinking about the climate of the location that you're in. Are you a person that always wants to be in a sunny climate? Are you a person that's looking to have various seasons and experience those things as well? But also thinking about the career opportunities that could be within those locations as well. So thinking about where you want to be when you graduate, and does that location offer you career opportunities? Whether you plan to stay in the US or not, you may be interested in doing things like internships during your graduate studies. So it's always important to also think about what opportunities are available for you in that location. Of course, there's also, you need to be looking at the program itself. I know that that seems maybe like something you've already thought about, but I think sometimes students don't deep dive into their research when thinking about specific programs of interest that they might have. across various schools and programs, your major for the graduate program you could be applying to could have a very similar title. So say electrical engineering or whatever it might be. But actually the courses that you will take during your studies and that course structure may vary greatly from university to university. So it's really important to make sure that you're doing a deep dive into the websites of these universities to look at the programs and see what's going on in those particular programs. You can also look to see what types of research are being done within these programs and making sure that they're actually available for you for the programs that you're interested in and the types of research you're interested in as well. Some other things that you can consider as a student that you might not be thinking about is the job placement rates that students from those institutions have. So once they graduate, how many students, what's the percentage of students that are finding jobs within 3 to 6 months of graduating? That will be able to give an indicator to you if that institution is preparing students to be able to be in the workforce. And so that's really important to look at. Something else important that may be a factor for you as well is looking at the starting salaries for graduates once they come out of the program. Also thinking about resources that the institution can provide you, including networking resources like connecting you to alumni, connecting you to faculty, things like that, as well as resources for being able to connect you to internship opportunities or research opportunities if that's something you're interested in. And then lastly, I always tell students to make sure that you're looking at the average student profile, meaning what type of student is typically admitted into those programs. That always helps you get an assessment of the type of student or maybe the type of academic rigor that will be happening at those institutions to give you a general snapshot and idea of the institution. So once you've done a lot of that research, which will take time, so make sure that you are giving yourself plenty of time to go through the research materials, go through those different schools and different programs, and looking at what has your wants and needs and what can meet those. Once you do that and you narrow it down to a few different schools, you'll want to, of course, begin that application process. The application process for higher education in the United States is generally the same across most universities. There's a few application requirements that they typically require, but it's always important to, of course, during your research, make sure that you're looking at each individual institution's requirements. Today, I'll go over some general ones. Like I said, these are ones that you'll typically see on most institutions' websites of what they require. Some require maybe all of these. Some might not require all of them, but require some. So again, it's important to make sure as a part of that initial research that you are looking for the specific application requirements for your particular program of interest. So first and foremost, you'll of course be required to submit an application. This will most likely be online. It will ask you various questions about your personal profile and things that you'll need to submit. A lot of institutions will also require you to pay an application fee. This means a certain designated amount of money that you will need to pay prior to your application being fully submitted for the institution to review. So just make sure that you're also looking to see what those costs are so that you can prepare for that. A lot of times too, you can reach out to institutions if you are having issues with maybe paying that application fee and be in touch with them about opportunities to have that waived or how you can maybe do something like attend a virtual event like you're doing here for this one to have an application fee waived. So definitely something to consider. Outside of the online application, they will require you to have additional documentation that you may need to submit as well. So in addition to that online application, some institutions may require some standardized test scores that could be either the GRE exam or the GMAT exam. For international students, most likely you will need to provide proof of English proficiency through some English language tests. Each institution will have probably a different and or similar requirement that you need to make in order for you to satisfy that English proficiency requirement. And there could be different tests that they will accept. Generally, you'll see the TOEFL exam, the IELTS exam, the PTE exam, the Cambridge exam, and now I've noticed since COVID has happened that a lot of institutions have begun taking the Duolingo examinations because they tend to be a little bit more accessible and offered more often for students. So make sure that you're checking out what your university would be requiring before you sign up for any one of these tests so you can decide which is the best test for you to take. Next, outside of testing, they're going to require you to submit your academic records. So your transcripts, in essence. Basically, anything that you've done since you've graduated high school, most likely the institutions will want you to submit that. So they have an academic record and can look at that to determine if you're going to be able to be successful in the program. Each institution will have various requirements of what they'll accept for transcripts. Usually you'll see language used as official or unofficial documentation. What that means is that typically official documentation means transcripts that your university issues directly to the university that you're applying to. Unofficial typically is copies that you may have of your transcripts or something that you upload yourself as a student. So each institution will have different requirements, so it's also important to make sure that you're submitting the correct type of transcript documentation. In addition to that, you will also most likely be asked to submit either a personal statement or sometimes referred to a statement of purpose. Sometimes you may hear people call it an essay as well. This is something that is sometimes uniquely within the higher education system in the US. Of course, there are other education systems that use this, but I do know that our international students can get tripped up by this sometimes of what it is. Within applications, sometimes you are given a prompt or a question that you must answer through that personal statement or that statement of purpose. So we always highly recommend that you actually answer that question or prompt properly. But also, this is a time for you as a student and an applicant to humanize your application. And what I mean by that is that, of course, we have your academic records and we can look at your GPA or whatever grades you got. We can also see your test scores and things like that. But we don't see who you are as a person in those things. So this is an opportunity for you to talk to the faculty or admission staff that would be reviewing your profile, to tell them a little bit more about yourself, why you're interested in that graduate program, and how that graduate program can meet your professional and personal goals. So really important for you to take time to make sure that you are working on that personal statement. Next, you're going to have letters of recommendation that are typically required. It will vary on how many are required. I would say on average, it's typically 2 to 3 recommendations. So make sure that you're making connections with university professionals, or if you're someone who's done internships, someone outside of the professional sector as well, as they can provide recommendation letters for you. Each institution will have requirements of who they will accept recommendation letters from, but generally they'll be in one of 2 categories: academic references, so meaning, a faculty member or a professor that you've had, or a professional reference. Again, if you've been someone who's been able to work in the field, or you've had opportunity to do internships, a professional recommender can be accepted as well. But again, that's going to depend on the institution, whether they accept one or the other or both. But most institutions these days do accept both. And then some institutions will have additional requirements outside of those sort of core general requirements, which include the possibility of having an interview with you to get to know who you are, your interests, why you're interested in the program. Some institutions may require you to have additional research that you provide, but not all will have that. So it's important, like I said, to make sure that you're compiling some of these things as you begin your search, but also making sure that you're looking at the websites for the programs once you've narrowed that down to make sure you know the exact requirements for each individual program that you have. And one little piece of advice I always like to tell students is make sure that when you're submitting your actual application, as well as any supplemental documents that you will be required to submit, that you make sure you put your full name printed on all of the documents. This is just a little tip to make sure that your application processing goes smoothly and quickly for you, so that way none of your documents get confused with another student and they're able to be connected to your file easily. Okay, so those are some general requirements. What I always tell students, of course, during the application processing phase and through the researching phase, there's going to be some things that come up that you're confused about, or you might have some questions about things. That is normal, and we understand when anybody that works in admissions or works in a university understands that students are going to have questions when they're beginning to just learn about programs or beginning to learn just about universities. But there's a few tips and tricks that I have for students, so I just wanted to run through those for you. First and foremost, some things to avoid. What I would say is when you're reaching out to faculty or admissions staff, utilize that time wisely with them. And what I mean by that is try to refrain from asking them questions for things that can be easily found on the website. Most universities work really hard to actually have very in-depth information on their websites for the programs, as well as some general application requirements. So the minimum requirements for your program, things like that, should all be listed thoroughly on the website. So try not to utilize the time that you would have with admissions staff and with faculty to ask those questions that you can easily research yourself. So again, utilizing that time beforehand, before submitting that application, to make sure you're thoroughly researching those areas. Of course, like I said, we do understand that sometimes it can be difficult to navigate all of those different websites from different schools. So of course, you're still allowed to ask these questions to admissions staff. But if you're able to do that research prior, that will help make things more smoothly for you and allow you to ask more in-depth questions about your program or anything else that you might have outside of those basic requirements. Also, I recommend that you don't trust non-official websites or representatives. The institution or the university that you're applying to, their website, as well as their staff, are going to be the most reliable people for information. It's going to have the most up-to-date and accurate information. So it's important for you to make sure that you are reaching out to them and taking the information that they're giving to you. I know it can be tempting sometimes. Maybe you know someone that goes to school here and they can tell you some things about their application process. It's still important for you to rely on the official websites and official representatives, as things can change from year to year. And lastly, don't what we call wing it. And what we mean by that is don't hope that you can just submit all of your documents for your application and submit your application online all on the same day, the day before the application is due. That is not going to be the best for you. And what I mean is that you need to take time to make sure that you're researching the programs properly, researching what is required for those programs for the application, and taking the necessary time to compile that documentation and putting in your best effort for that. Because then you're going to be able to allot yourself enough time to feel proud of the application that you're submitting and have enough time to submit it before the application deadline. Now, some things I do encourage you to do. One is, if you're doing some research on the websites and you find some specific research projects or faculty that have really sparked your interest and made you decide this is why you want to attend that institution, make sure that you mention that in your application. That personal statement, which I mentioned before, this would be a great opportunity for you to personalize that personal statement by mentioning some of these things. Also, you can feel free to reach out to professors and faculty at the institutions if you're interested in working with them. Whether that be if you're interested in a PhD or even a master's student, if you're interested in research or interested in the type of coursework that they are teaching you, reaching out and building those connections is always a good thing. So then that way, again, you can utilize those connections and utilizing all of the resources that the university has to offer you. And that includes admissions staff like myself, faculty and professors at the university. Make sure that you're connecting with us during that application process so we can be your resources and help you. You're not supposed to be doing this alone. It's not for you to be stressed about. It's definitely something we want to help you through. We know it's a complicated process and it can be stressful. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions. And then lastly, of course, I alluded to this in the previous slide, but make sure that you really are being thorough and detail-oriented with your application documents, making sure that you're going through and reading them, proofreading them and things before you submit. I know that a lot of students will apply to several different universities and may use similar documents for each institution, which is okay. But just make sure that you're still modifying those documents to personalize them to each institution. I don't know how many times I've seen personal statements that have been addressed to an institution that is not NYU, say Columbia or MIT, that students are also applying to, and they forgot to change that in their personal statement. So making sure that you're thorough with all of those details so that you can put your best application forward and give yourself the best chance to be admitted into a program. So hopefully once you do all of that, you are admitted into a program. Maybe you'll be admitted into a couple of programs. So it's important to think about what to do after that. A lot of times students think, oh, if it stops here, I got admitted, I did what I needed to do. But I always like to remind students there are a couple of things that you need to consider between the time that you get admitted and the time that you show up on campus for whatever program you decide to choose. And so there's a couple of things you need to be thinking about. Number one is deciding which institution you'll be going to. So if you've been offered a few acceptances, making sure that you notify the program that you do want to attend, notifying that you have an intention to enroll. And then likewise, any institution that you do not want to attend, notifying them that you will not be attending. A lot of institutions, when you notify them that you want to enroll, they will be asking for what they call a tuition deposit. This is usually an amount of money that sort of holds your place in the incoming class so that the institution knows that you're coming. And it's usually something that goes towards your first tuition payment. So making sure that you're looking into what your institution's deposit requirements are and paying that by the deadline so that you are secured in your enrollment. Additionally, you want to, as an international student, be making sure that you're thinking about the visa procedures that will need to take place over the summer or whenever it might be before your start term, and making sure that you're gathering the financial documentation as well as any other documentation that you may need to take to your visa interview. And that usually includes a US document called an I-20. But of course, universities will always be able to connect you with resources on how to get that set up. But just make sure that you're, again, utilizing those resources. And then lastly, making sure that you are making plans to find housing. A lot of graduate students do not actually have housing on the respective campuses that they apply to. Some do, but a lot do not. So you would need to find housing in the area that you would be located in. So it's again important to utilize those resources, connect with the university on how to be able to secure that. And then lastly, we always recommend students to continually check their email, as universities will provide additional instructions on your next steps for everything that you need to do and complete prior to your arrival on campus. Okay, so that's some general information. And as we were saying before, I, of course, work at New York University. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about our engineering programs just quickly before we get into the Q&A. So you can see a little bit about our engineering programs and begin that search if this is an institution that you are interested in pursuing. So first and foremost, here is a list of all of our programs. We have 33 degree granting programs across a wide variety of disciplines that actually range across 11 different academic departments. You can see on the slide that we have some of those as master's programs and a few PhDs as well. Again, it's important to make sure that you're looking at all of these different programs because we have so many in so many different departments. I always recommend students to make sure you're checking out all of the programs within your department, so not just the program itself, as you might find a program that is really similar or more specific to what you actually want to study. So it's important, again, when you're going through that broad research phase, making sure that you're trying to take in as much information as possible. Here, I know at the beginning I said, of course, your statistics are not everything, and they definitely are not. But like we said, it is a good starting point, and it helps you understand the prestige that an institution has. So there are a few stats that we do like to highlight here at Tandon. Number one, we are actually ranked by US News and World Report as the number 29th best university. We've also been ranked number 33 among the best US engineering schools, which we are very proud of. We've actually been shooting up the rankings over the last 10 years and are projected to continue to move higher and higher within the next couple of years because of the amazing resources and faculty and research being done here at Tandon. Also, one of my favorite rankings that I like is actually by the Princeton Review, and we've been ranked number 3 for students' dream school pick. So hopefully that's your dream school. It was actually my dream school. I just graduated from here myself. So hopefully that could be one of your dreams as well. As I mentioned before, knowing a little bit about the average student is super helpful for you to get an idea of what the academic profile is like for a student at an institution. So I do want to highlight some of those things here at Tandon. So first and foremost, on average, the statistics I'll be talking about here are for all of our programs, so across all 33 programs. So of course, there may be programs that have averages below or above this. So just take that into consideration. But on average, our students have a 3.5 out of the US 4.0 GPA system. I always tell students that the 4.0 system is a perfect A letter grade is a 4, and then a B letter grade is a 3.0. So usually we need students somewhere in between there, usually towards an A grade. And then we also have some GRE, some programs that require the GRE, which is, of course, a test that I mentioned earlier. Not all of our programs do require the GRE. You can always check out our website for specifics on that. But I do like to give averages just to give you an idea. So for the verbal portion of the GRE, we have an average of a 154, and the quantitative portion is a 166 on average for our admitted students. And again, this is out of a total of 170 points that you can earn. Some other statistics I do want to highlight is we have a 15-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So that means you'll be able to interact with your faculty in smaller class environments. And then also we have a total of about 2,600 graduate students here at Tandon. Although NYU itself is the largest private institution in the US, Tandon itself, we are a small community. So it gives you all the resources of a big institution, but still you're not going to get lost in the masses, which is really great for students, especially at the graduate level when you're trying to network and connect with faculty. Of course, we are located in New York City. If you did not know that, New York University is located in New York City, which is an amazing place to live and study. We are actually, New York has been named over and over the most influential city in the world for good reason. And it's also actually the second largest tech city in the United States. You can see on the slide here on the right-hand side, just some of the few high-tech industries that are in New York City. And it's a really great opportunity for our students to be so closely connected to these institutions, to have our faculty who have connections at these institutions. It's just a really great opportunity for our students when they're thinking about internships and also connecting for jobs after they graduate. And then also the last thing I do want to cover here is that return on investment. So I sort of mentioned this in the beginning, thinking about when you're doing your research, thinking about what institution is a good fit for you. And what does it all mean? And so what I meant by that was when you're looking at programs, you want to make sure that they are going to be providing you with what you want as an outcome. Do they meet your goals? Do they get you to the job that you want, or the next step of your professional career? You want to make sure that the investment that you're putting into a graduate program is really going to yield you the results that you want. And here at Tandon, we really do believe that we provide an excellent opportunity for education and resources for our students to prepare them for the real world, for their next steps, whatever that might be. And a few statistics we like to highlight to showcase that is, first and foremost, our career placement rate, which it means within 6 months of graduating, 99% of our students are in a job that they desired or have moved on to a PhD program that they wanted to pursue. So what that tells us is that our students are coming out with hireable skills and that they're definitely highly sought after, which is really great. In addition to that, we have a common starting salary that starts at 6 figures for our graduates as well. And we've also been ranked number 4 for U.S. engineering schools for salary potential. So again, these are just some amazing things about our institution. I do welcome you to attend any of our additional virtual events. If you have additional questions or want to know more, we'd be happy to explain it a little bit more in depth. But I think I'm going to hand it back over so we can talk about some questions and answers. I will leave this up though. This is our direct contact information here at Tandon. So if you ever need to reach out to us, definitely take a screenshot of this or a photo. We'd be happy to be in touch after today's event.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was absolutely wonderful. We do have a couple of questions here and some questions that came in through social media as well. Our most popular question, though, are the specific English proficiency language scores for Tandon. I don't know if there are any programs that have different score requirements, but any general information that you could provide on that would be great.
Yeah, of course. So we do list all of our, we take several tests at Tandon. We take TOEFL, IELTS, PTE, and I think the Cambridge exam and Duolingo. So we take them all. So apologies that I can't remember all of them off of the top of my head, but we do have those listed on our website. But I know for the TOEFL exam, we do require a 90, so 90. And for the IELTS, we do require a 7.0. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we have a question about scholarship and financial assistance opportunities for masters in engineering.
So outside of this loan opportunity or scholarship opportunity that we have between each other, if you were to unfortunately not be accepted into that, we're looking for additional scholarships. So for all of our students that apply to master's programs, if you're admitted into Tandon, you're actually reviewed for scholarship opportunities. Those scholarship opportunities are based upon your academic merit. And what I mean by that is your GPA, so your academic records with your transcripts, or your GRE scores, depending if a GRE is required. The higher your academic merit, the higher your scholarship potential could be. Do keep in mind, though, that we do not have scholarships that cover the full cost of tuition. I always like to caution students about that when thinking about budget and hoping and praying they're going to get a full tuition scholarship. I want to have a real conversation with students about that. Typically, on average, our students are awarded between $3,000 and $7,000 in merit-based scholarship per academic year, with a top out of about $10,000, which is a little less than a third of what the tuition cost typically is. And then I think you said something about research funding too. Should I say something about
research funding as well?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I was like, I think there was a second part to that. So if you're interested in doing research and looking for research funding through a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship, typically at Tandon, those are reserved for our PhD applicants. So if you're interested in PhD, almost all of our research opportunities are for them. If you're admitted as a PhD, you most likely will have full funding on the PhD side, and most likely you'll have some sort of stipulation within your offer letter about stipends, or if you've been given a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship. But that's something you would need to speak to the faculty about, as they're the ones who issue that. Outside of that, if you're a master's student, unfortunately, those research opportunities are not normally given to master's students.
Thank you. And now that we're talking about research assistantship, so with Colfuturo, with our beneficiaries, they do get their an assistantship guaranteed
Mhm.
with Tandon. What would this entail? What is the day-to-day of this?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different than what you may be familiar with in terms of teaching assistantship or research assistantship. The assistantship that you would be granted through this scholarship opportunity is called a graduate assistantship. In essence, what I tell students is it's pretty much an on-campus job. They typically get paid about $26 an hour, so it's a fairly good paying job on campus. There's stipulations, obviously, on how much you're paid within this opportunity, but basically what you would be doing is working within the admissions office, which Nico, who is with us here today, is actually someone who works in our office and does this graduate assistantship. But you would work within our office and help with answering student questions. So you would be able to help process applications, help students with their application, help them find things on the website, answer any of their questions throughout that application process. And then you would be working that about 20 hours a week or less in conjunction with your coursework.
That's great. Thank you so much. Everyone that's listening, that is a really, really good opportunity. Like I mentioned before, usually any teaching assistantships, graduate assistantships, they are very limited. So the fact that you guys get this guaranteed if you are ColFuturo beneficiaries, it is definitely a really good opportunity. And then we have another question about if they need a master's degree to apply for a PhD.
Great question. So I'll speak for Tandon and then give a wider answer. At Tandon, no, you do not need a master's degree to apply directly to a PhD. As long as you have an equivalent to a US 4-year bachelor's degree, you can apply as a direct admit into a PhD program. What I would say is that it does become a little competitive to do that as you're going up against master's level students. And so what I always recommend students that are trying to go through that route is make sure that you are providing in your application some sort of research that you're currently doing. I think that always helps boost a profile, but also making sure that you're reaching out to faculty advisors in the department before you actually submit your application. I think that's really key. You can have candid conversations with those faculty advisors about what their requirements are, what your background is like, and how that looks. Now, for other institutions in the wider sense, they may have similar backgrounds or similar requirements. You will need to check with each individual institution if they will take what they call direct admits into a PhD.
Perfect, Carrie. Thank you so much. We have another question. I think I'll take this one. They're asking about the advantage of going to NYU Tandon if they are a ColFuturo Crédito Beca recipient. So Juan, thank you so much for your question. As you know, our Programa Crédito Beca is financing of up to $15,000 US for master's programs, PhD programs abroad. They have to be full-time and 100% in-person programs. This would not apply for any virtual programs or part-time. And the advantage that we have the agreement that we have with NYU Tandon is a $14,000 scholarship per year for students that are beneficiaries of ColFuturo. So you will be able to get the ColFuturo credit grant. And on top of that, if you are admitted to Tandon, you will also have the benefit of the guaranteed graduate assistantship position, as well as the $14,000 off your tuition a year. So that would be one of the benefits. Again, the application opens on January 10th. So if you are considering applying for ColFuturo, definitely check it out. And then we have some more questions about the graduate assistantship. I don't know if Nico is doing this, but if we could hear a little bit about his experience, that would be wonderful. We have a question asking about some more specifics about the graduate assistantship. So maybe you can take us through your day-to-day, Nico. And you
Sure.
can reply in Spanish if you want, whichever works best for you.
Given that we've done most of it in English, let's try some Spanish. So, hola a todos. Yo soy un estudiante beneficiario de ColFuturo aquí en NYU Tandon. Estudio Computer Science y trabajo en la oficina de admisiones junto con otro beneficiario de ColFuturo también, Felipe. Y básicamente el trabajo que hacemos aquí es como lo describió Carrie. Nosotros nos encargamos de ser como ese intermediario entre prospectivos estudiantes a nuestros programas, brindándoles información y haciendo, digamos, el manejo de todo el proceso de admisión para ellos. Es básicamente un trabajo en el campus que básicamente da la oportunidad de trabajar máximo 20 horas. Y eso, pues, digamos que el horario que tú puedes manejar es muy flexible y se ajusta a tus horas de clase. Cuando arrancamos este semestre, pudimos colocar nuestras horas, entonces, pues es muy flexible y muy, sí, como es muy fácil, digamos, que tú puedas ajustarte a él. Puedes trabajar menos de 20 horas si así lo quieres. Y sí, básicamente es eso.
Gracias, muchísimas gracias. Qué pena, tuve un problema con mi micrófono. Okay, we have a question about Nico's contact information. Nico, si te gustaría compartir tu contacto, puedes poner en el chat, en todos, ahí les va el correo electrónico de Nico. Something that I want to mention about what Nico just said about the 20 hours of work, this would be with an F1 visa. So once you are admitted to an institution in the United States, and then you use your I-20 form to get your appointment here at the embassy in Bogota, you will have an F1 visa, which allows you to work 20 hours per week while you're enrolled in courses. That's exactly what Nico is doing. And then when you're not enrolled over the summer, you can work up to 40 hours a week. These are on-campus jobs, similar to what Carrie was mentioning before. So anything, maybe you can work at the library or the cafeteria or admissions office. So there are definitely some really good opportunities. Carrie, we have another question that came in through social media. Can you tell us a little bit about the statement of purpose, what you recommend, any do's and don'ts, tips and tricks?
Yeah, it is something that we get a lot of questions about. But as I was mentioning before, what I would say is that make sure, number one, that you're answering the question that's actually prompted to you in the application. It may vary from institution to institution. And some institutions may actually not give you a prompt at all and say, please submit a statement of purpose, which can be a little bit scary at times. So what I tell students is again, this is an opportunity for you to let the faculty who's reviewing your profile know who you are and what your goals are and how the program fits into those goals. What I would say is to try to avoid is replicating your resume onto a statement of purpose. A lot of institutions will also require you to submit a resume or CV about some work that you've done. If they do that, definitely refrain from then putting that bullet pointed resume or CV into a paragraph form into your statement of purpose. That, I say, is a sort of big no-no to do, because you're really missing out on an opportunity to show another side of yourself. So what I always tell students is make sure you're looking at the program, talking about what you've done in the past, but sort of highlight the top stuff that you want to highlight. Then talk about what interests you in the program, why you want to do that program, and then talk about how you think that the program will help you get to that end goal. So it's important to talk about the past, present, and the future within your personal statement. I think that's really important for students to make sure that you're doing that. Again, it's really the only opportunity that you have to show some personality throughout your application. So make sure that you're taking that into consideration as well.
Thank you so much. And then speaking of statement of purpose, can we go over maybe some application deadlines? Is it rolling admission? Do you guys have early action for graduate programs? Let's touch base a little bit on that.
Yeah, of course. So at Tandon specifically, all of our applications for the 2023 year are actually currently open. So you can apply for the spring or the fall entry term. We do rolling admissions. So meaning once you submit your application, if it's fully completed, it will go to the faculty for review, and then they will provide you a decision. They won't hold those decisions up until a certain date to release them all at once. They will roll out those decisions as they come in. Typically, students will receive a decision between 4 to 6 weeks after they've submitted an application. For application deadlines, we do have a few different ones. So if you're interested in spring term, which I'm assuming most might not be, a lot of people like to come in the fall, but I'll mention it just in case. November 1st, which is right around the corner, is the deadline for our spring term, which starts in January. And then for anyone interested in the fall term, which typically starts in late August or early September, our deadline is December 1st for what we call a priority deadline. I'm using air quotes here to say that because it's not the same as what other universities call an early action deadline. Early action deadline typically has an assumption that it's kind of a contract. So if you apply to their early action deadline and you get admitted, you must come there. That is not what our priority deadline is. For all of our programs, the December 1st deadline for the priority for the master's programs just means that you're going to be a part of that first applicant pool that gets reviewed by faculty. And I always just encourage students that if you can get your documents in by then, please do. Otherwise, it's totally okay to do our normal application deadline for master's applications, which is February 15th, 2023. Now for PhDs, I don't know if anybody's interested in a PhD, but the deadline for that is always December 1st. And there is no additional deadline. There is only one entry term, which is fall for PhD, and there's one deadline, which is December 1st.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. These deadlines actually align really well with our Col Futuro application. If anyone is interested in it, our application opens on January 10th and closes on February 28th. So if you get the timing right, you apply with your letter of admission in hand, which is bonus points for you if you are applying for Crédito Beca. Well, Carrie, thank you so much. It looks like we do not have any other questions. To everyone online, we will be sending out the recording and Carrie's contact information. So if you have any questions at all about NYU, about Tandon specifically, feel free to reach out to her. I will be sending that in a couple of days. Les recuerdo que el beneficio que tenemos con esta institución es una beca de $14,000 por año, si es que son beneficiarios del programa de Crédito Beca, más la garantía de esto que nos contaba Nicolás de su Graduate Assistantship. La convocatoria se abre el 10 de enero y cierra el 28 de febrero. Es una financiación de hasta $50,000. Entonces, si están interesados en postularse, les invito a que vean toda la información en colfuturo.org. Thank you so much, Carrie, once again. Thank you so much, Nico, for taking the time to be here today. It's always so nice to speak with Col Futuro recipients. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll see you guys at our next webinar.
Thank you.
Bye, Carrie. Thanks so much.